This is Odd Thomas, and yes, his first name is Odd. And his mom told him that there was a mistake at the hospital, and he was supposed to be named Todd, but it ended up being Odd, and she just went with it. And speaking of his mom, she claimed that she was a psychic and she kinda went crazy, and she was sent to a mental health facility when Odd was only 12. And Odd has something similar to his mother. He's also a psychic. He can basically see dead people and communicate with them in his own way. And only two people know of his ability, his girlfriend Stormy and Police Chief Porter, who Odd helps out by leading him to murders in a small town in California called Pico Mundo. And next scene, we see Odd looking at a teenage girl named Penny, and she was recently a murder victim, and the police haven't found her killer yet. And the dead can't really talk, but they can show Odd visions of how they died and who killed them. And Odd follows her and he runs into her murderer, Harlow. And Odd describes to Harlow how he killed Penny, and that Harlow keeps her blood as a trophy. And Harlow jumps out of his car and runs away, and Odd runs after him and they end up in this pool party. And they also end up fighting and Odd wins the fight. And when the police come, they find the evidence that Harlow did in fact kill Penny and they arrest him. And Penny gives Odd a kiss and she finally disappears into the afterlife. And Chief Porter, not wanting others to know of Odd's secrets, by secret I mean his telepathic abilities, he gives him a cover story on how he found out that Harlow was the killer and he lets him leave. And later that night, Odd sees a dream where a group of faceless people were killed and they were begging to be saved. And these faceless people were wearing a red and black bowling uniforms, and a man wearing a mask kills all of them. And Odd wakes up from his dream and he figures out that there's about to be a big murder. And in the morning, Odd leaves for his job, and he works as a cook in a small diner in the town. And Stormy, his girlfriend, comes to visit him there. And Odd and Stormy have been together since they were kids, and when they were kids, they found this fortune teller machine and it told them that they're destined to be together forever. And Odd believes this with all his heart. And as he was making food, he sees this alien-looking creature that he calls Bodak. And Bodaks are things that feed on human death. They don't actually cause the murders, but they feed off of the murders, so they follow around people who are about to die, or they hang around a place where a murder is about to occur. And only psychics can see Bodaks, and if a Bodak finds out that you can actually look at him, he's gonna kill you. Yeah. And Odd is really getting worried now, and the Bodaks didn't even come when Penny died, so this means that something bad is about to happen. And a weird-looking guy comes in the diner and orders some food, and the Bodaks are surrounding this person. And this means that the killings that are about to happen are somehow related to this guy. And Stormy leaves for work, and she works at an ice cream shop at the mall. And after Odd finishes his shift, he goes out to investigate this new guy. And he starts calling him Fungus Bob because of his weird green hair. And as he was following him, he is stopped by Viola, a waitress that works with him at the diner, and she tells him about this dream that she saw, about people who were wearing black and red bowling uniforms, and a death happened, and she tells him all of this, and he just tells her that it's just a dream, and he leaves to find this Fungus Bob. And one of Odd's psychic abilities is when he needs to find somebody, he can just randomly wander around and he pretty quickly runs into them. And Stormy calls this ability a psychic magnetism. I wish I had that with hot women. That would be pretty cool. You just wander around and just find a really attractive woman who wants to date you. Come on, that would be a pretty cool power. Anyways, when Odd follows his psychic magnetism, he finds himself in a mall where Stormy works. And she brings him some ice cream and he tells her that he's looking for the creepy guy that walked into his store. And Odd also tells her that Fungus Bob has dozens of Bodaks with him, and he's never seen this many Bodaks before. And Bob buys 2 tubs of ice cream and he leaves the mall. And Odd follows him to his house and he waits for Bob to leave. And after he did leave, Odd breaks into his house in search of clues. And inside the house, Odd sees this door just freezing in front of him. And he opens the door and he sees a portal opening and hundreds of Bodaks start coming out. And he hides behind the door until they leave, and then he starts looking for clues. And as he was searching around, he finds satanic markers and he sees the next day marked with it. And he figures out that tomorrow will be the day that the killings happen. And Odd goes to Porter's house, and he tells him about his findings, and Officer Porter agrees to send one of his new officers, Varner, to look for Bob. And later that night, Odd and Stormy go out for dinner in a church. I don't know why they went to a church for dinner, but while they were setting up the dinner table, Odd sees Bob coming towards him. And Odd then just takes Stormy and he runs out of there. And after they run out, they call the police, and Chief Porter finds the church vandalized, but he tells Odd that they couldn't find a fingerprint anywhere. And Odd has also been seeing visions of a bullet going through a heart, so he orders a large heart-shaped steel and he gives it to Porter just in case if it's him that dies from the bullet. And Odd and Stormy go to this dinner, and after they have their delicious dinner, they go out to this place to bowl. And inside this bowling place, they see that the uniforms have been changed from green to red and black. And Odd figures out that these were the people that he saw in his dream. And they start looking for Bob, but they couldn't find him anywhere there. And Odd then calls Porter and he tells him that this might be the place where the massacre could happen. And Odd still feels like he's missing something crucial. And he wants to talk to Violet and ask more about the dream because she also kind of saw the same dream. When they leave the bowling alley, they run into Officer Varner and he asks them why he's asked to follow someone who didn't really do anything. And Stormy tries to distract him and she tells him that Bob tried to assault her and that Odd stopped him and that's why he's following him. And then she starts flirting with Varner and she asks him about his tattoo, which reads POD, and he tells her that it was something stupid he did when he was young. And Odd is impressed with Stormy's manipulation tactics, and Stormy jokes around and tells him that that's how she got him to fall in love with her. And the couple go to Violet's place and they ask her to describe her dreams. And she closes her eyes and she tries to recount what she actually saw, and she tells them that she saw people in a bowling uniform dying. And she also sees herself dying, and then she starts to freak out and she comes out of the trance. And she couldn't explain anything more because that's pretty much what she saw. And Odd sees the Bodaks all over Violet's house, and Stormy tells her to leave the house immediately and not to go to the bowling alley tomorrow. And while riding his motorcycle back, Odd and Stormy hear a woman shouting for help, and he runs over to help, and then he also hears dogs following the woman, and he hears a gunshot. And when he gets there, he sees that the girl is dead, and he sees another man has come to rescue the girl and shot at the dogs, but it was too late. And the police arrive at the scene, and Varner and his partner Byrne were also there. And Varner is very suspicious of Odd, but Chief Porter tells him to just find Bob. His actual name is Rob, by the way. And Porter then tells Odd and Stormy to go home, and Odd takes Stormy to her house first, and he notices a police van outside. And he's actually pretty glad that somebody's gonna watch over Stormy while he's not here, and he just goes home. And when Odd gets home, he finds a gun on the ground. And then he finds Bob, basically Fungus Bob, and he's dead in his bathtub. And somebody's apparently trying to frame him for Bob's murder. And he also figures out that Bob has been dead for a while, which means that the Bob that he saw in the church was actually Bob's spirit. And Bob's spirit blames him for his death. And Odd covers Bob's dead body and he hides it in this abandoned prison. And Odd then sees thousands of Bodaks in the town, and the death of Bob hasn't stopped them. And this means that the massacre is still happening tomorrow, and apparently Bob is not responsible for it. And Odd gets a call, and he's told that Chief Porter has been shot in his own home. And Odd rushes to the hospital, and he finds Officer Bren there, and he also finds Porter's wife, and she tells him that the steel heart saved Porter's life. But he's still in critical condition. And now, the marked date has arrived, and in the morning, Odd goes to Bob's house and further investigates. And he finds search results for devil worship and rituals to call for Satan. And he then checks the fridge and he finds human teeth and fingers. And all of these body parts came from people who were murdered. And something starts gnawing at him because he's convinced that he's missed something so important. And he then realizes that his vision of seeing the bullet go through somebody's heart was not actually Chief Porter's, rather it was Bob. And he's the one that Odd saw in his vision getting shot through the heart. Odd then goes back to the abandoned prison where he hid Bob's body, and he closes Bob's wound and he sees a tattoo. And the tattoo reads POD, and it means Prince of Darkness. And it was the same tattoo that Officer Varner had. And from this he figures out that Varner was actually a co-conspirator with Bob, and he killed Bob because Odd was following him around, and Varner didn't want Odd finding out about his plans. And Odd also figures out that the Bodaks knew that he could see them, and they were intentionally following Bob so that he doesn't figure out that Varner is actually behind everything. And Odd then uses his psychic magnetism and finds himself in a mall where Stormy works. And he rushes inside the mall and he goes to the security and he sees people dead in a room. And he hears another person in the room and he waits for him outside holding a baseball bat. And when the masked person goes out, Odd hits him over the head and the man collapses. And when he unmasks him, it's apparently Officer Byrne, Officer Werner's partner. And from this he figures out that Byrne was also part of the plan. And Odd then takes Byrne's gun and he goes to the mall to find Varner. And he sees Stormy behind the counter of the ice cream shop, just selling ice cream. And when he looks up, he sees thousands of Bodaks coming out of a portal. And he rushes to find Varner where he hears a woman screaming, "He's got a gun!" And we hear a gunshot and people start running around to flee the mall. But apparently, the mall doors have all been locked. And the masked gunman randomly shoots around and shoots down a bunch of people, and he also shoots down Stormy's ice cream shop. And Odd rushes to the shop, and while the gunman was reloading his rifle, Odd shoots him in the shoulder and then his head, and he kills him. And then Odd goes to the ice cream shop and he's really scared that Stormy might be hurt, but in a few minutes she comes out and she's actually smiling at him. And Odd then goes back to the unmasked gunman, but it wasn't Varner. It was the man that tried to save the girl that was apparently killed by the dogs yesterday. And from this, Odd figures out that this man was also part of the group. And the Bodaks are still in the mall, which means that Odd hasn't actually stopped the impending massacre. And the dead girl comes and leads him to the basement. And by dead girl, I mean the one that got killed by the dogs. Yeah, that dead girl. And when he gets inside the basement, he sees a truck full of bombs rigged to blow in 2 minutes. And Varner apparently spots him and he shoots at him. And Odd quickly gets inside the truck and he drives it away from the mall. And if it was me that rigged that truck to blow, I would just flatten the tires or just screw with the engine so that somebody doesn't drive it away. Come on, Varner. Anyways, Varner holds on to the truck and he starts shooting to stop Odd. And he shoots him in the arm, but Odd still manages to drive the truck away from the mall. And when they were far enough, Odd jumps outside the truck and Varner gets inside. But by this time, 2 minutes was already up and the truck explodes and kills Varner in the process. And Odd blacks out and he wakes up in the hospital with Stormy beside him. And when he goes outside the hospital, he finds everyone in town is waiting for him because he is now apparently a local hero. And then we see him going home and spending days on end with Stormy in his house. But after a few days, Chief Porter and his wife come to visit him and they tell him that Stormy's body has now been released from the coroner's office. And apparently, Stormy was actually killed in the mall by the masked shooter. And Odd knew this, but he couldn't accept it. And he kept pretending that her spirit was actually her and that she wasn't actually dead. And Porter finally tells him to release Stormy so that her spirit can finally go to the afterlife. And Odd promises Stormy that he would see her soon, and Stormy's dead spirit finally kisses him goodbye and she disappears into nothingness. I mean, this really surprised me, guys. I really thought she made it from the shooting, but apparently not. And in the closing scene, we see Odd leaving his town and going to Las Vegas to continue his work. And he promises himself to work diligently until the day comes where he would actually be together with Stormy again. And that is how this movie ends. They killed the cutest person on the movie. I'm mad, but still, it was a good recap, right? Leave your comments in the comment section. Also, like my video and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys on my next recap. Bye.